Welcome to mrhorrortale. This time, we'll be plunging directly into the shadowy depths of blue holes, where the crystal-clear veneer conceals a trove of eerie encounters that defy explanation. So, brace yourself for a journey into the unsettling and mysterious world beneath the surface, where the blue holes hold secrets that may leave you questioning the boundaries of the known. Without further ado, let's begin. To ensure you don't miss out on other horror contents, remember to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. Story 1. I was part of the research team that was sent to explore the Amberjack Hole off of the coasts of Sarasota, Florida. This isn't public knowledge, but I'm here to affirm that it's all part of a government initiative to explore several deep blue holes. I don't know what they're expecting to find in them, or why they're still planning to continue with it after what we came across at Amberjack. We have no idea what we're messing with, and if we keep on digging, well, I'm scared of what we may end up unleashing. I was forced to keep quiet after our research was concluded. They didn't want our findings to come to light, and to be quite honest, I could definitely see why at first. Letting everyone know what we'd found down there, it'd only provoke either mass hysteria or countless curious bastards diving down the hole to try to see it for themselves. However, when they said that despite what we found, they were planning to continue on with the project, well, I guess I'm sort of just hoping this declaration will make them hesitate. Although, being realistic, I guess I'm just trying to leave behind an explanation to what may occur in the future. My words may sound crazy now, but if the government keeps going further, they'll begin making sense eventually. As I said, I was part of the research team in charge of exploring and charting the Amberjack Hole. If you're unfamiliar with blue holes, they are, in the simplest terms, deep, dark sinkholes in the ocean floor. They are ecological hotspots, and more often than not have a high diversity of flora and fauna living in them, which makes them really interesting for marine biologists like myself. However, they are often very difficult to explore due to their extreme depths, which only translates to things like an extreme increase of pressure in a short amount of time, or nitrogen narcosis. Therefore, we went with a safer alternative, diving only once and deploying a benthic lander, which was basically a thing that'd hold many different scientific instruments for measuring things, such as levels of nutrients, compounds, and isotopes in the water, as well as cameras, for getting a constant footage of the things that were happening down in the depths. I was one of the divers that carried the benthic lander down the hole, along with one of my teammates. As we went down, I immediately noticed something wasn't right. I've had plenty of diving experience throughout my career, and well, I've never felt like that before. Going down, seeing the light fade away almost completely, and the water get colder and colder the further down we went. It felt sudden, and somehow deliberate, as if the hole itself was warning us not to keep going. I ignored it, of course, figuring it was probably just the effect of going so far down for the first time. Not much else occurred until we reached the bottom. Once we were there, though, it felt otherworldly. I guess it must be the same feeling astronauts might have gotten when stepping on the moon the first time. I couldn't see anything. Our flashlights made barely any dent in the hole's enveloping darkness, and I immediately began losing certainty of where exactly was the surface. The strangest thing, however, was that I felt as if it weren't just two of us down there. I could swear I felt the water moving, and a silhouette swim right past me as I aimed my flashlight. I began getting really uncomfortable, and knowing we couldn't stay down for long, signaled my partner to begin going up again. Once out, I could see his face, and knew he'd also felt it. But as we both exchanged looks, we decided to mention it. We'd have plenty of time to figure it out anyways. The very next day, the observation period began. We'd measure all variables and keep a constant eye on the camera feed, gathering as much data as possible to later draw potential hypotheses from. It was a long process, and often involved some of us monitoring the sensors and the camera overnight, just to make sure we wouldn't be missing appearances of nightly active fauna or something. It was in one of those long night shifts that I first saw it. I'd been staring at the feed for over an hour by then, scribbling notes when it appeared, a human outline, in the distance, standing calmly at the bottom of the ocean. I rubbed my eyes, trying to make sure I was seeing properly, but there was no mistaking it. I began zooming our little camera, trying to get a better image, but just as I did so, the person vanished. I stood there for a second, stunned, and immediately made an emergency call for the team. We gathered early next day. We went over the footage countless times, trying to figure out if it maybe was a weird shadow cast by coral, or a trick of the light reflecting on the lander. In the end, there was no denying it. There was something down there that looked unsettlingly human. Our interest in the research multiplied tenfold. Most of the team would now voluntarily spend a good chunk of their day watching the camera feed, hoping to catch a glimpse or a trace of the ocean person. Months went by, and it didn't show up again. We began to doubt our footage. We began dismissing it with potential theories that had no real basis behind them, but that made it much easier to maintain our worldview intact. That is, until it returned. It was an early morning this time. We were just about to finish running some analyses on the water's isotope distribution when suddenly he emerged, right in front of the feed this time. I could do absolutely nothing but stare, baffled, as this naked young man, with long, unkempt hair that seemed to stay completely dry and pale, almost translucent skin, approached the camera slowly, walking without being affected by the weight of the water at all. My whole body began to shake as I stared in horror as the creature opened his mouth impossibly wide and emitted low, humming sounds that traveled crystal clear through the water to our microphones. They were similar to those of a whale, but somehow forming words that said, "Don't look for us." Having said this, he tore off the camera from the lander with ungodly strength, and the feed was cut off. We informed the laboratory and the fund providers immediately and showed them the footage. Not a day afterwards, government agents showed up at our research station, confiscated all the footage, and ordered us to retrieve the benthic lander. We all refused to go back for it, so they sent some people of their own for it. Only one of them came back, with only pieces of what had been a 600-pound equipment station built to withstand extreme pressure. Afterwards, they covered the whole thing up, forced us to publish all our other findings, and to never mention what we'd discovered, under threat of harm to us and our families. I've taken steps to ensure I can't be traced to this. I've hidden my family away. If they somehow find me, I'll know I went down doing the right thing. Whatever beings are down there, they clearly want to be left alone, and seem to have no restraints on using violence to ensure it. May God have mercy on our souls. Story 2. Every diver knows about the Great Blue Hole. It's like Mount Everest for mountain climbers. If you've ever had any interest in the sport, you've heard about the place. You train, and you prepare yourself. You complete your deep diver specialty course, all with the expectation of one day facing against its depths. It is, after all, one of the most beautiful diving spots in the entire world. That was exactly me a few years ago. I'd grown up learning to dive from my mom, and one of my biggest aspirations in life was to save up enough money to go on a trip to Belize and explore the Great Blue Hole in all its glory. Just seeing pictures of it, it's hypnotizing. I couldn't wait to get a glimpse of the secrets that hid in its depths. That is, until I finally did it. I trained in different spots, took the course and obtained the certification, got a job with a decent salary, planned out vacations, and booked a trip straight to Belize. There's no decision I've regretted more in my entire life. I guess I sort of noticed sooner than I first thought. Despite being about to fulfill one of my lifelong goals, as I stood in the boat, floating right in the middle of the endless blue void right under me, my stomach sunk a little bit. I couldn't really explain why, but I suddenly was struck with this slight sense of dread. I didn't listen to it, though. I just attributed to normal, run-of-the-mill nervousness. I checked all my gear, listened to what the guide had to say, and sunk into the sea, slowly descending into the darkness of the Great Blue Hole. I was marveled at first. I could see all types of beautiful underwater plants. Fish followed, all sorts of colorful creatures swimming around the area. It was beautiful. I couldn't believe I was finally there. We kept on going down. Soon, the sunlight was no longer visible, and it was time to turn our dive lights on. The water got significantly colder as well, and it was then that, I guess, the vibes started to change. We must have been around 20 meters deep. I kept sight of our diving guide, but I'd chosen to stray away and explore on my own for a bit. The light wasn't helping a lot with visibility. I almost hit a rock formation until I could finally make out its shape. I began circling around it, checking out the way the water had shaped it over thousands of years, when a huge figure swam right past me. My light briefly illuminated a beautiful shark tail as it quickly swam up, away from the depths of the hole. I looked at it go, puzzled. What had made it swim away like that? Had we scared it away? The dive guide then signaled me that we were gonna keep going down. I nodded and joined the group. Soon, we were much lower, and the water seemed to be getting even colder. I don't really know if this was an effect of the cold on my body or the pressure, but moving down there felt heavy, as if the water had somehow become more viscous, and it required more effort to move around. The guide signaled that we could swim around, and I drifted towards the middle of the blue hole as I looked straight down, trying to get a glimpse of what may lay further down, knowing we could never get any lower. As I stared into the black void, an intense feeling of being watched back overcame me. I began getting really uneasy and was about to swim away when I saw movement down. Several white spots appeared from the darkness, rapidly growing as they approached. They were sharks, must have been dozens of them, along with fish of different sizes and color, all swimming as fast as they could away from the bottom of the hole. I barely managed to move out of the way as the school of fish swam right past me. Bewildered, I looked at the guide, who seemed to be genuinely baffled at what had just happened. He signaled us to get back together and begin ascending. I began to get a really bad feeling about it, and I could tell the guide felt the same. He moved upwards way faster than he should have, in an attempt of making us catch up with him. I tried to maintain his rhythm as I ascended, and I just knew something was right under us. I don't know how. I could just feel it. I saw the guide head on down to help one of the other divers, but I refused to look down as dread made me take deeper and deeper breaths of oxygen, emptying my tank 2 times faster than I should have, as I kept on frantically swimming, trying to get away. Soon, we were about to reach the surface, and I felt a strong current push us upwards. I stifled a scream and couldn't help but look behind me. A gigantic black hand, at least twice my size, extended from the depths of the hole, reaching out to us, grazing the fin of my diving suit. I swam desperately upwards and made it out, climbing the boat desperately to find only one of the 2 other diving mates on the boat. A few seconds after me, the guide climbed the boat desperately and yelled at the driver to start the boat and get us immediately out of there. We were never told what happened with the other guy. I haven't dipped a single toe into the ocean since then. Whatever hides in its depths, I don't want to know anymore. Story 3. I don't really know how else I could properly talk about this, so I'll just go ahead and tell the whole story. I'm a diving instructor and an official guide for diving groups for the Blue Hole of Dahab, off the coasts of the Red Sea, next to Egypt. Well, at least I used to be, until I quit about a month ago. That last day looked like it would be just like any other. Take the group on a boat towards the Blue Hole. Make sure they all have their gear ready and adjusted properly. You'd be surprised to see how often all these certified divers forget to check that their oxygen tank is properly secured. Then, ask if there's someone who will want to go through the arch. If you don't know about the arch, it's basically an underwater tunnel through the reef that surrounds the Blue Hole that takes you out directly to open water. It's a dangerous stretch if you don't have a lot of experience, and since it's previously claimed the lives of some divers, now we offer to guide divers through it to ensure their safety. Not everyone wants to risk it, of course, And in this case, it was only one other diver that was willing. So, having settled all of that, down we went. The dive went pretty much as usual at first. We did a gradual descent, letting the divers move around for themselves to explore around the hole, and eventually taking them further down, until we reached the safe limit. I used to really love my job, and this was always the best part. Getting to be surrounded by the underwater world, completely different to what one may see on the surface, experiencing things other people only dream of. I felt really privileged. Now, in hindsight, it all just seems hostile. Eventually, I signaled everyone that it was time to start returning to the surface, and so we began the gradual ascending process, making sure there'd be no danger due to sudden change of pressure or anything like that. We got back on the boat, and after replenishing our oxygen and a little break, it was time for me and the other guy to dive down once again to go through the arch. We dropped back into the water, and the boat took off, ready to meet us on the other side. This time, as we went down, it all felt different. I felt watched, as if around the fish and the plants, something was stalking us silently. It made me really nervous. I'd never felt like that before, especially not underwater. I tried not to show it. After all, I was supposed to be guiding this guy through a pretty dangerous dive. I couldn't allow myself to seem unconfident. The feeling still lingered, though. We kept on gradually going down, until we reached the entrance of the arch. At those depths, sunlight doesn't really get through anymore. Therefore, our dive lights were on to make sure we could see where we were going. The light barely managed to make a dent in the dark tunnel that stretched right before us. Never had it struck me as so ominous. I pressed on forward, ready to get this over with, and the diver closely followed. The tunnel, for some reason, was completely empty this time. No animal swimming around its corners or sliding through its walls. Nothing. It was really eerie, and my dread only increased every second. I kept on going, trying to increase my pace but not leave the diver behind. Suddenly, our lights went off, both his and mine, at the same time. Nervous, I began looking for my spare one, as the guy quickly approached me and grabbed my arm, clearly alarmed. The feeling of being watched became stronger, and I felt like it wasn't just us in the tunnel anymore. I finally found my spare light, and quickly turned it on to get a sense of our surroundings. There, at the side of the tunnel where we come from, was another diver. Had somebody followed us down? Another member of the group? No, that wasn't it. A chill went down my spine. There was something really strange about him. As I squinted trying to figure out what it was, I realized it wasn't a person. That diver was a corpse. It must have been someone who hadn't made it through the tunnel. Its suit was tattered and ripped in several spots. Its skin had corals and algae sprouting from it. And it wore no visor, not like it had needed, because there were just 2 empty sockets in its face. It's not unusual to run into corpses when diving. It is a dangerous sport after all. What was disturbing about this one, though, is that it was swimming. Somehow, the body was staying afloat in the water and moving, as if beckoning us to come to it. I turned around and began swimming away as fast as possible, terrified, and dragging the diver with me, trying to get us out of the tunnel. Suddenly, the tunnel began to close. Its walls sprouted these pointy, white rocks, and the walls began slowly coming down. As I swam desperately, trying to make it out on the other side, I noticed that they weren't spiky rocks. They were teeth. I don't know how, but as I closed my eyes and swam as hard as I could, we somehow made it to the other side. I looked behind us, and the tunnel had closed off completely. We began making our ascent as fast as possible without causing irreparable damage, and made it up to the boat. The diver was shaking, and as he babbled, trying to explain what we'd seen, I shared a look with him, and he knew what I meant. There was no need to make the others nervous. I hid my shakiness as best as I could and told them he'd gotten a bit lost in the tunnel. No one really seemed to believe me. I quit my job the day after. I guess the divers that didn't make it through the tunnel They didn't simply get lost after all. They were lured. Thanks for watching. If you like the stories, remember to subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any other true disturbing stories. See you next video.